All right, well, here we go. I'm Kellon Sanders,
I'm Jason Otterrecker.
and this is the Slow Burn Podcast, where we cover what, Jason?
So this is basically where we take our daily grind and turn it into a daily climb. We work towards making ourselves better and making the people around us better every day. So today we're talking about, today's title is Ain't No Such Thing as a Soulmate.
Is that the title?
That's what I titled
Ain't no
it.
such thing. This is a country version.
If you say there isn't such thing as, it just doesn't sound the same.
No such thing as a soulmate.
No such thing as a soulmate.
No such thing.
We are in Oklahoma, so
So today's about
dating, relationships.
dating and relationships.
Yep.
Okay. Where Jason actually does a phenomenal job at this, and I do a terrible job at this. So it's going to be a good contrast.
But like we said before, I had good examples of relationships for my whole life.
You did.
Not just my parents, but extended family, really good examples of that. And you did not.
No, I didn't have an example, at all, to be honest with you.
Right. Not your
Yeah.
parents or extended
No.
family or anything.
It's like I might as well have been raised by wolves or like a feral cat in a barn, something like that. And we're like, oh, here, go out into society and be a normal person. And then I'm just like operating out of some like low level midbrain, like in my, deep down next to my cerebellum, just trying to have a relationship with somebody and screwing it up all the way.
You're like Oliver Twist, just living on the streets, trying to survive.
That was me.
Except I haven't read Oliver Twist, so I have no idea what that means.
What was that you said the other day? I knowing it is a lot different than doing it.
Knowing
in this case, you don't know or do.
I've never read it, so I don't know about it. All I know was the movie Oliver and Company, the old Disney movie about the cat or the dog.
Okay.
Could be either one. It's been a while since I saw it.
Never watched it.
You're missing out,
Yeah.
as usual.
Yeah. Like I missed out on relationships.
So there's a couple points that I want to mention before we start, or as we start. The first one is this episode will not be including any bashing or criticism of previous relationships or previous.
You're not gonna get any juicy details about exes or anything like that. We're gonna expose somebody or.
I'm sure it would be entertaining for you guys, but
if
that's
anything,
not what
I
we're
would
about
like
here.
maybe expose myself and all the horrible things that I did, but I wouldn't say it about somebody else.
Exactly. So this is not. There's nothing beneficial to us or to you from blaming things on previous boyfriends or girlfriends or relationships.
Yeah.
When you tend to blame other people, that's when you stop looking at yourself and analyzing yourself, and you stop making yourself better because it's always someone else's fault. That includes our previous relationships. If we just blame someone else, then how will we do the next one better?
Right. And that goes for anything, really. Anytime you're blaming even if something bad happens to you, you can still look at that and say, what could I have done different in this situation? There's probably steps that you could have taken to avoid that situation entirely. So you can take responsibility, and there's a lot of growth in that.
Yeah. So none of that. You won't be getting juicy details of those things. The other thing to keep in mind, the other point is I'm coming at this from now being 10 years married. So 10 years married this summer.
This summer, right?
Super proud of that. We're in a fantastic relationship. I feel like a very blessed person.
I think I dated a girl for 10 days once.
How can you call it dating though if it's only for 10 days?
We hung out for 10 days.
You were in a.
I'm just kidding. I think my longest relationship was 2 years, but it was super tumultuous, and I was incredibly selfish, and everything was my fault looking back on it, honestly.
Hopefully not everything, but
the majority of
that was
things were
still
fault.
before you had gone through major changes.
Yep.
Obviously, we're always still making efforts to change and become better people, but Kel, as part of his past, has been through substantial changes, as you have probably heard if you listen to previous episodes. But when you go through a change that dramatic, it's easy to look back on your previous stuff and say, man, I screwed this up so bad.
So bad.
But that's why you're working on every day on doing things better.
Yeah. Yeah, constantly. I do really accept a lot of responsibility for a lot of the screw ups that I had. I mean, there's no other way to learn from it if you don't take responsibility for it, right? So, I can at least do that. That's the least I could do is take responsibility for the things that I screwed up. But I mean, also like looking back on it, I told a lot of the girls that I dated before, I'm not good at this. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm super neglectful. I'm really not good at relationships. I have a hard time not committing. I just have a hard time like being a good partner to somebody. And there's a lot that goes into that. Like there's a lot that goes into the selfishness that I have in relationships. A lot of it stems from a lot of the childhood traumas that I went through and am still healing from. And so, but I mean, at least I was honest about it in the beginning. But,
so the format for today is basically we decide to individually come up with little pieces of wisdom for relationships and dating and come up with a list of things that we feel like are the most important or make the biggest impact in your relationships or maybe are somewhat controversial but are pretty big things.
Right.
And then we did that individually, and then today we're coming together and sharing back and forth what we have on our list, and then talking about what we think about those things, if we agree with them or if we feel like we do them poorly or whatever we have to say about it.
Right. So it could be my list of items, a couple of them could be things that are important to me or maybe questions I have for Jason, or Jason's could be something that controversial that he's thought about before, something along those lines. So there could be just kind of random. And honestly, this podcast could probably take 2 or 3. We could probably divvy it up into 2 or 3.
It may last long if we can split it up into several episodes. Yeah.
Right. So my first thing that I would say, for me personally, if I'm going to consider getting in a relationship with somebody, let's say I meet somebody new, let's say it's a man or a woman, it doesn't matter either way. Let's say it's somebody I want as a friend or a business partner, or even a woman that I could potentially date.
So any kind of relationship.
Any kind of relationship at all. At this time in my life, the number one thing that I look for is the ability for that person to be honest with who they are. The ability for them to be honest with themselves. I feel like I'm honest with myself, even with all my faults and issues that I have had growing up. And I feel like I'm honest with myself. And by being that way, I've been able to overcome a lot of the problems that I've had because I've been able to assess them with some sort of self-awareness, and then I can grow from that. I don't think that there can be much growth, in my opinion, but I don't think there can be much growth with another person if they lie to the people around them or they lie to themselves. So if I'm going to engage with somebody, like I said, man or woman, for whatever reason that it may be, if they're not able to be honest with me, then I just don't see much. I don't see much longevity in that relationship. I don't see much purpose in it, and I won't have anything to do with it.
Yeah.
So unless there's like a purpose for that relationship, I'm just not going to waste my time. And if there's not honesty inside that person where they're honest with themselves, I usually just drop it like a, hot potato. I'm like, this isn't for me. I'm not here to just like be your buddy for a little while or date you for a little bit and then carry on my way.
I mean, we're too old now we have too much stuff going on in lives as almost 40-year-old men to waste it on things that are not productive or fruitful in our lives, right?
Right.
So
I'm not in high school. Like, I'm not going to be chummy and like, hey, we should hang out sometime. I'm not going to hang out with you. I'm not going to do it.
This stuff is purposeful.
It's got to be purposeful, right? I'm just very purposeful with my time and my intentions. And if I don't see honesty in that person, I just don't waste my time. I'm not rude about it. I'm like, yeah, sure, maybe we can get together sometime. But I don't do it. So
have you ever had those relationships where the other person clearly is way more into not just romantic relationships, but friendships too, where the other person is making huge attempts to spend lots of time with you, and you're like, I might have to be rude here, or
well, if that happens to me, which it happens frequently, and I don't mean that like gloating or egotistical at all, but I get approached a lot to hang out or people try to get to know me. And I oftentimes I have to be very, very cautious because I'm like, what are your intentions here? Are your intentions genuinely to get to know me for who I am? If that's the case, let's get lunch. But if you're trying to make connections or you're trying to get an investment money or you're trying to climb some sort of social ladder or whatever it may be.
Like those old phone calls from your friends in college that you haven't talked to in 20 years.
Yeah.
And like,
Hey,
let's get lunch. You know, I have this business that I really got into recently, and there's some really fantastic investment opportunities that I'd like to talk to you about today.
What is that episode of with Michael Scott when he's like, did you know that the candle market is a $2 billion a year? He's trying to sell them on that MLM. You know, he's trying to sell Andy and I think Jim. And Jim's like, are you really trying to get us to buy into that? And Andy's like, I'm in. But yeah, you know, it's like that. It's like, man, I haven't talked to you in like 20 years, you know?
What's your
angle here, you know? So I've learned to be pretty guarded in that regard, especially over the last few years. I've just had to be very, very careful, and now my circle is super small.
I can see though that idea that wanting openness and honesty with the person that you're in a relationship with to be a big deal, because it's one of the things that I love the most about my wife is she's just a genuine person. She's just the most genuine person I know.
She really is.
She is as
through and through.
The epitome of what you see is what you get.
Definitely.
She does not put on a different face for different people.
Nope.
She doesn't pretend to be a different person. Like
she, you know what she does? Sometimes it cracks me up. So his wife, Lindsay, she's terrible at texting, right?
Yes.
So she'll just text like gibberish, garbled stuff, and I'm like, Lindsay, I can't figure that out at all. She's like, not my problem. She's like, you got to figure it out. I'm like, she just keeps doing it. And I'm like, Lindsay, I can't understand what you're saying. So I haven't tried to change her. I just try to figure out what it is. I'm like, okay, that's an R. The R is close to the T. Okay, that's what she meant. So I have to, do you do that too? Where you're like, you have to play like.
I get to do it in real life conversations.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Where she'll say something based on a bunch of conversations that are going on in her head or thoughts that she has, and it'll come out of a context that I'm completely unaware of.
So she completely misses the segue where from one conversation to the next.
Yes.
And you just have to guess.
I've gotten so good at it.
You have?
Oh man.
That's funny.
I mean, when you are in a relationship with someone for 10 years, 12 years now, since we started dating, you just get to know all those little things. So she'll say something that sounds like it's totally out of the blue.
Yeah.
And I'll do a bunch of gymnastics and be like, okay, she's talking about Brecklin's first grade class because she has pictures tomorrow. And so I can connect all the dots.
We need a vacuum because she got dirty in her room.
Something like that.
Yeah, something just crazy.
I've been able to connect all the dots. Well, most of the time, not all the time.
Yeah.
But one of the things I've always respected a lot about her is she's just a genuine person, and that's what all of her friends love about her. She's had friends since she was a kid that she still talks to all the time, and you can't. It's kind of intoxicating to be with someone who's that
genuine,
honest and genuine all the time.
Right. How could you not? Because you're just like, I just love you because you're just so authentic with who you are. I love that.
Yeah.
It's kind of rare to find that these days, honestly.
It is because you're in a world where everything's a social media mask. You know, you're doing something to impress a person somehow. But it is a really nice thing to have someone who opens themselves up, either honestly with themselves, which is very important because you, like you said, like if you can't even be honest with yourself, then how are you ever going to be honest with me?
How can we have a genuine relationship? You can't.
No,
it's impossible. Yeah.
But to have an equivalent amount of openness and just being able to, because one of the biggest parts of relationships is vulnerability and trust.
Right.
And if I'm bearing my soul and becoming open to you, then you do not reciprocate at all.
Yeah.
And you still maintain this facade in front of you.
Yeah.
And
it's too fake for me. I can't do it.
There's
I just
not
can't.
there's not really any.
And there's people out there that can, and they'll just be fake with each other, and they'll have a great 10 or 15-year
Good,
fake relationship.
yeah, good for
and
them.
I'm like,
And
that's awesome. You know, it's not for me.
you're never really experiencing the true joy and depth of
Genuine,
what should be human
heartfelt
relationships.
relationship.
And
I agree.
that's kind of sad.
Yeah, so that's one of my foundational, like, first three things that I look for at the very beginning is that honesty, that authenticity. You know, it's a huge deal for me. It really is.
I can see why.
Yeah, definitely.
So I think my first one kind of complements that one really well, and it is the fact that to have a good relationship, you can have superficial relationships that are fine, they're whatever, but to have a good, genuine relationship, it has to be built on a foundation of common interests, common goals, common purpose, a foundation of just friendship. Because that's after you get through that honeymoon phase of puppy love and what's most of the time just lust and attraction, you get to just the daily routine, and it's mundane and it's kind of boring. You go on vacations every once in a while to make it more exciting, but most of the time you're just like waking up and going to work,
Right.
and
You're like, who do I want to have? Who could be next to me while I'm just bored?
yeah, who can I sit with for 4 hours when we're not really doing anything and just hang out with and
And their
talk?
breathing doesn't bother me.
And yeah, and they don't like do anything super annoying.
Super weird. Yeah.
Which everyone will do something annoying that annoys you in your relationship. So don't feel like that's gonna ever be non-existent from those. But I think if you take away all the romantic stuff, like the super dramatic emotional things, and you just take it down to bare bones, you can make a relationship last forever if you have that solid foundation of common purpose. Like, are we both working towards the same things? Do we both have the same kinds of goals in life? Do we have the same levels of priorities? So our family is important to us. If you have those things in common and you have a good solid friendship, then you can ride out lots of storms.
Sure.
You can ride out lots of difficult things, because when it comes down to it, like I connect with that person on a very deep, just relational friendship level.
Right.
And
there's good character behind it too.
Yeah. I mean
Right.
that's probably a whole separate point. But if I can trust your character and integrity in that relationship, then that just helps to further establish trust and friendship, and carry you through all kinds of challenges.
Yeah.
And there will always be challenges.
You know, when I was heavily in my addiction up until I went to rehab 4 or 5 years ago, I was just constantly riding the opposite of that, just the emotional wave of being elated for one reason or another, usually off of drugs, and then the crash and the drama, and then back up and down for almost my whole life. Even before drugs, I was still an addict. I was just addicted to, other sex or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was just addicted to the highs and addicted to the lows. And there was no base like that, really ever, until we became friends in college.
Right.
Yeah. And so I really just, admittedly, I didn't start learning about what you're talking about really until I was almost 34, which thank God I did learn at some point, because some people never get it at all.
No.
Right. And so, yeah, thank God I learned that. But those highs and lows were brutal. Looking back on it, they're brutal.
Yeah, just for your body and brain to constantly be in that fight or flight stage.
Constantly.
Like, you
Yeah.
always have the adrenaline and stress running all the time. Like, you're never able
You can't
to just
even
relax.
sit there. I could not even sit there. Wherever I went, I didn't want to be there because I was there. I just didn't want to be in my own skin. It was terrible. Much less in my own skin next to somebody that I didn't even know if I liked or not, but I'm with them all the time because I'm just like, got some sort of addiction problem, and I just needed somebody to be there for one reason or another.
That's probably a lot of the reason behind the physical relationship being a big part of things.
Yeah.
Because you needed to distract yourself from the deeper stuff.
Exactly. And so after I went to, and if we weren't on a high or a low, I was just bored. And the boredom killed me, right? Now I live for the boredom. I'm like, please bring on the boredom. I want to be bored. I don't want to do anything because I just had so many ups and downs for 3 decades. And so now I welcome it. So after going to rehab, I started dating. My how I felt about myself, my esteem of how I felt about myself went through the roof, and my confidence went through the roof because I could trust myself. I loved myself. I loved Kellon for who I authentically was, and I really came into who I really was at that time. And then I started dating on my level of the value that I felt, right, about myself. So the women that I dated were very quality. So I dated like a judge, for example. I dated a woman that had a very successful interior design company, and she was a remarkable person, as well as a couple of others as well that didn't work out for one reason or another. But the point that I'm trying to get at is that we could be bored together. And so we could go through those, we could just sit there and binge on a show for 6 hours and, just kind of be bored, and that's okay. Or read a book next to each other, or sit outside and go for walks. Things that I was not doing before without being intoxicated.
Right.
Yeah. If I went for a walk, it was like, let me drop some acid first or something ridiculous, or eat some mushrooms.
That's probably one of the biggest signs of mental health being in a completely different spot for you is your ability to not need that constant high level stimulation.
Yeah, I detest it now. I detest it. I really do.
It's the ability to be comfortable with yourself in silence is a really good indicator of health, mental health.
I agree with you, and I'm fortunate to have a lot of peace in my life now, and I have great healthy boundaries to protect that peace. So if anything comes my way, whether it's personal or business, it doesn't matter. There's good, healthy boundaries that I draw around myself to keep that peace, because now I can function and operate really well and get a lot of things done and accomplished and have great relationships as long as I have that peace and that boundary up. And like I said, I enjoy the boredom. I love going to Home Depot, and I like trying out my new sugar-free jams that I just got from Amazon, and just like like romancing life is what I like to call it. Now I enjoy making espresso in the morning and sitting there for an hour and journaling and reading something. It's much different, and it's really incredible.
I think you really find that I'm sure you've found that you start to enjoy just pretty common conversations with new people, or talking about things that someone else is interested in is easier for you now, because you can, instead of just thinking like, man, this person's so boring, I don't want to talk about any of this stuff.
Yeah.
You're okay just being peaceful and thinking, okay, I'm just going to listen to this person talk about something that interests them and interests me zero.
And ask probing questions so that I can understand and get to know. Yeah.
Learn another person.
And yeah, it's refreshing not to be quite so selfish, honestly.
Let's talk about that next week too.
Yeah, that's next week, right? If we don't, we could do another episode on this, honestly. But okay, so there's something else that I've discovered that works really well for me, and is that it's this. I personally am a huge proponent of wanting to be with a woman that is very independently happy and whole without me. I think that there's a lot of push and a lot of one-sidedness for men that want women to be dependent on them, whether they admit it or not. I do not want that at all. I want a woman to be wholly independent and secure, whether I am in her life or not. And I want her to have her own thoughts and ideas and her own path that she's on, that does not require me for her to be dependent on me for. And so I want it to be a situation where it's 2 + 2 is 5 and it's synergistic, and not a situation where I'm having to live for 2 people because I'm trying to emotionally and financially support somebody else. I've done that before by accident, and I regret it tremendously. It is not fun to go down that road with somebody. So I'm sure you and Lindsay are shining examples of exactly that.
Yeah, I mean, my career has really dominated our relationship for most of it because I was in medicine and 4 years of med school, putting in a lot of time, and then 3 years of residency, putting in a lot of time. It made it hard for Lindsay to. I mean, she always had her own stuff, her own job, her own career, and she's really worked hard towards getting better at that. But especially once we started having kids, she started losing some of that in taking care of kids while I was busy all the time. So she made huge sacrifices in her independent goals when I was getting through the medical field and working towards my job. So I to this day am so grateful that I married a person who is willing to give that much of herself to sacrifice some of her dreams, or at least postpone them to the future, to get us through my stuff. But she gave up a lot through that time, and she still gives up a lot for our kids and our family. But she's always had those independent dreams, and she doesn't need me. She doesn't need my dream at all.
No,
she's got her own stuff
thing
that she wants to do. If I was suddenly gone tomorrow, which I hope she would be super sad about, but if I was gone tomorrow, she wouldn't feel completely empty inside as far as
direction
of her life.
She would immediately go start a pound.
Hopefully not immediately. I want her to be sad for a little while.
Like a day or two?
Yeah. At least a day or two. Just at least get past the funeral before you start trying to find someone else to marry or.
Yeah.
No, but she wouldn't have an identity crisis.
Yeah. That's important.
That's the biggest part of it, is like when someone completely depends on you and their identity is completely wrapped up in your identity, then they don't really feel like you're with a separate person. It just feels like you're like a little extension of me that isn't interesting anymore at all.
Not at all. I mean, I'm such a sapiosexual, and I need stimulating conversations, and I need to know more about you and what you've learned and your original ideas and thoughts. I need you to bring me some things.
Yeah.
And if your thoughts are my thoughts, I instantly will get bored, and it's not the good kind of bored that I enjoy.
Yeah. Yeah. So but I do remember a long time ago, when we were kind of talking about the kind of girl that you wanted to date. And you made comments at some point like, I really want someone who is going to be available for me, like available and able to support me through my career and blah, 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 that sort of thing. This was old Kel. And at the time I was like, I mean, that's good. If that works for you, then that's great. But I always felt like, man, that would be
that had to have been boring. Before I went to rehab.
It was a long time ago.
Oh yeah.
This is back in college.
I didn't even know who I was.
No.
I had no clue.
You knew that
I was just spouting shit off at the mouth.
That's very possible. But you knew that you wanted to be successful. You knew that you were going to work really hard to get there. So you figured, like, we're going to be too involved taking care of all of my busyness.
That's true.
For her to have her own stuff going on. So I just need her to be available for me as a support,
Yeah, that's right.
Like having an assistant coach that can like take care of the little stuff here and there so that we can get our team to the championship.
Cheerleader of some kind or something. Yeah. I had no idea what I was talking about.
Yeah, that was old Kel, and I can see the transition over the years to a version of like, I need someone who is my equal, who challenges me to be better and
100%.
will hold my feet to the fire when I'm not doing my part. Like, I need someone who can meet eye to eye with me.
Absolutely.
So that's a much healthier version of you. It's nice to watch you get to that point over the years. So, so for my second little thing, I have always thought, not always, but I have thought for a while now that arranged marriages get a lot of things right. So you tend to think arranged marriages like it's old school, like Eastern Indian families, and the parents just pick a guy for a girl, and then they just tell you like, this is who you're marrying. Good luck with it. And the girl gets no input whatsoever. I've learned enough about arranged marriages.
Are we incorrect? Americans are incorrect about assuming those things.
It's more complicated than that.
Some person just comes out of left field, and there you are stuck with them for the rest of your life.
Yeah, that's not exactly
how
it
works.
No. In some cultures, it is a little bit like that. There's a lot of different versions of arranged marriages, but when your family is a good, cohesive, strong unit, and you are in very close relationship with your parents and your siblings, they know you better than anyone else in your life, then who better to help you pick the right person for you to get married to and spend the rest of your life with than the people who know you the best.
Right.
And have the wisdom of another generation of life lived older than you to know. So maybe young Kellon, maybe not knowing exactly who he is or what kind of relationship he needs, if he had those people in his life who know him well and have a lot of wisdom and were allowed to have that input into your relationships, you maybe would have avoided a lot of mistaken relationships throughout your life. And so what they end up setting up is a situation where the girl or the guy, they have an interest in a person, but then they kind of do a little matchmaking behind the scenes. They get to know the family. A lot of times it's a family that they already know.
Within their community.
Yeah. But then in a lot of ways, once they get married, they're starting their relationship at that point in a lot of ways. They do get to know each other. They spend some time together, but it's nothing like American dating life. Like American dating life is completely reversed.
Yeah, it's on Tinder.
You do, yeah. You meet, you do all the intense relationship stuff right at the beginning, including all the physical intimacy. And then as time goes by, you figure out if you're compatible.
Right. A year later.
Yeah. It's like,
do we even like each other?
Turns out like, I don't really like this person that much. In this setup, they do it the opposite. They find out if this person is compatible in all these different ways, and then you just start your relationship from there. The beautiful thing about it is it turns the focus from you and how does this relationship serve me? What does it provide me? Does it fulfill me? Am I happy? That's very a self-serving way of looking at it. And that's the way most Americans look at relationships. Like, what is this doing for me?
What can I get out of it?
It turns it from that to what can I contribute to this relationship to make it work?
So that reminds me of an interview I saw with Jordan Peterson one time where he was talking about a lot of the speeches that he gives whenever he goes on tour. And he takes questions from the audience very frequently at the end. He'll take like 3 to 5 questions. And he said, one of the most dominant questions that he gets is, how do I find my soulmate? How do I find my person? How do I find my partner? And he said, if you are going out of your way to try to find somebody that is the best fit for you, you are going about it all wrong. That is the last thing that you need to do. If you have any desire to be with someone, the first thing that you need to do is focus on being the best person that you could possibly be for that person and not going and looking for them. And then that person will come to you. I'm paraphrasing, but it's something along those lines of being selfless instead of selfish.
There's I think one of the sayings I've heard is, you want to become the person that the person you're looking for is looking for. So you think about the ideal person that you are looking for, and then think about the kind of person that they are looking for, and that you want to become that person. You want to fight to be that.
Right.
So if you're looking for the most incredible woman in the world to start a relationship and get married to, well,
that starts with you.
That incredible woman is probably looking for a pretty incredible guy.
Yeah.
If she's got her pick of any available bachelor,
yeah,
she's gonna find the most quality, character-filled, ambitious, sensitive, care. I mean, she's going to look for the absolute best possible thing she can find. And if that's not you, then you're probably not being realistic and you've got some work to do. So you want to become the person that your future spouse is looking for in whatever that means to you. So, but I think that's a kind of a cool way of looking at it, because it puts the pressure on you to bring something, contribute the best you can.
Yeah, man, you got to do the work.
So in arranged marriages, you have really low rates of divorce. You actually have pretty high levels of happiness in those relationships, because these two people come into a relationship thinking, all right, we're starting from here as a married couple. We have to figure out how to grow into a marriage. We have to grow this tiny little seed of a wedding into a long, happy marriage. And you go into that with the understanding that you're going to have to do some work, and you're going to have to be unselfish. Like, you're going to have to lay down a lot of your own priorities, at least for a while, until you figure each other out.
Right.
But it puts the focus on your marriage and that other person instead of on yourself.
You know, it's unfortunate that so many American marriages are, and this is one reason why I've never been married, because I take it so seriously. I take my commitments very seriously. As screwed up as I have done in the past, I've always been very committal. You know, you've seen me be very committal in the things that I care about.
Even just this podcast, like once you were
committed,
wanting
I'm
to
committed.
do it, like you are every week you are on it.
I'm on it. Yeah. Whether it's that or the company I've been running for 15 years, like through the ups and downs, I never sold it or quit. I'm just very committal. But it's you know, it's sad to me, Jason, that American marriages are just so disposable.
Yeah. They're not valuable
if you're not happy with the way things are going, well, I mean, that's okay. You just get a divorce. It's no big deal. It's like, what was the point in doing all that in the first place?
Right.
What was the point? Where's your value in the words that you told me? And it's disappointing. It really is. I think the divorce rate's even higher now. It used to be 50%. 5 or 10 years ago. I think it's 60 or maybe 58. I think it's higher now.
You know, I've seen a trend though in the younger generations, like younger than millennials, a little bit of a reverse trend in the other direction, because they've experienced so much of the disposable relationships.
They're over it.
They're like, this is not for me. I want something real.
Right.
And I am willing to do the work to get that. And so I think they're putting a little more value back in those long-term committed relationships and starting to get a better perspective on what marriage should be. I don't know that the divorce rates have dropped. I mean, they're probably higher, like you said. And in general, relationships are still kind of a transient, disposable part of your life that is really sad, like you said.
Well, you know, I think it's worth noting too that relationships take work, and that they're not just, you don't just like sprinkle some like hopes and wishes on it and like, and it'll do well. Like it actually takes work, just like getting in shape takes work and dedication. Climbing in your company or your career, it takes work and dedication. If you're going to go to med school, it takes work and it takes dedication. Just like anything else in life that you go through, if it's worth it, it's going to take work and it's going to take dedication, and it's not just going to. It doesn't just happen on its own.
No, that's actually my fourth one that I put on my list is your life. You look at your life as a garden, right? Whatever you want to grow, you're going to have to water it, feed it, right? and weed it, and plant the seeds.
You got to be purposeful about that stuff. It doesn't just happen on its own. If it does, then you just get weeds all over the place, and it's overgrown, and people walk on it. And yeah.
So you cannot, just like anything, you cannot grow a marriage into something awesome without putting in the work for it. It doesn't. Yeah. I mean, in rare situations, people are just compatible enough that they
maybe it's a little easier because they're just very compatible.
Yep.
Right.
Different personality types tend to, if you find if you are like you, the strong-willed, kind of a type A strong leader guy, if you find a woman who also has a really strong personality, opinionated and vocal, you might be able to have a very long, happy relationship, but there's going to be some conflict. That's
definitely,
you're going to have to work some of those things out.
Absolutely.
It may be harder in
Could
some
be.
cases to make that work.
Could be. Yeah. I've dated some very strong women like that, which I prefer. I like the independence, and I like that strength. Sometimes what comes along with that, though, is ego and pride, and that's hard to deal with, especially when I learn to lower mine. And so then I encounter ego and pride in somebody else. I'm like, this is going to be really difficult for you, because I won't put up with all the ego and pride. We can't make progress if you're in your own way.
Yeah, I guess those kinds of personalities do often come along with a level of confidence that can be a problem if it kind of morphs into ego or arrogance, or
it often does,
or
there's
pride.
There's that saying, you buy the land, it comes with cows. And a lot of that assertive and aggressive personality traits that come with ego and pride, they often can. But I prefer the strong, silent type. I mean, that's one reason why you and I are such good friends, is that you have that personality. You're the very stable, strong, silent type, who leads with their actions more so than their words. And so I am drawn to that. It complements me well. And I would say your wife, I would say Lindsay, I'd say she and I have a lot of the same personality traits.
Yeah.
That you and I complement each other well, that you
Right.
guys complement each other well, right?
Yeah.
So she and I are similar in a lot of regards, and we're both good for you, and you're good for both of us.
Yep. She definitely smooths out some of my rougher edges that have to do with just
Getting things done on time.
getting things done on time. And then a lot of other things. Just she's probably more vocal. She's probably a little better communicator as far as keeping us on the same page as a couple. I'm a good communicator about thoughts and feelings and stuff, but
You are.
but I don't. I'm not like the cohesive, like, let's make sure we're on the same page. She does that part of it much better than me.
Right.
I'll like I've said before, she'll keep me updated on all this stuff. Like, okay, here's what we're doing today, and then Brecklin has this thing tomorrow, and then the 2 hours before something happens, I'll be like, oh, Lindsay, I forgot I have this meeting tonight. I have to leave. Actually, I was supposed to leave 10 minutes ago, and I'll be gone all night.
That sounds exactly right.
And she'll be like, okay. I mean, at this point, she's gotten
used to it.
enough. She just doesn't like it, but she's got enough used to it where she's like, all right, see you later, I guess.
There's one thing that I find funny about you and Lindsay. It's a little bit off topic, but she has Lindsay booby traps all over the house.
Yeah.
I just find that so endearing. I mean, I could see it would be a little bit aggravating, but also endearing at the same time. I'm sure you have just gotten used to it, but like, you open up the fridge and like the milk is barely on the ledge and there's no cap on it. And that thing could have easily fallen off, and that's like that everywhere around the house.
Yeah, I feel like my whole house is like Jenga all the time.
Just booby traps all over the place, where you open up the pantry and the cereal box is wide open. It's barely hanging on the shelf.
No, it's not wide open. It's upside down.
Oh,
And so
upside down. So when you pick it up,
it just comes out the
has
bottom.
that happened before?
That has happened before.
Oh my God.
And then there was one time, I mean, I could tell endless stories. One time when I was pulling out the orange juice and the lid was like barely on. It was just screwed on just enough where it looked like it was on, but I kind of pulled it up, lifting it a little bit by the lid. The lid just pops off in my hands and the orange juice falls straight onto the floor, and it just it floods our kitchen with orange juice. And Sometimes I get aggravated and I'll be like, Lindsay.
Yeah.
But
put the freaking cap on.
Most of the time I'm like, oh, got booby trapped. Got to be more careful.
Yeah, you handle it well.
But it's you you look at each other's faults, and if you can make room for those things and have grace for each other, it goes a long way in making sure that you stay content with your relationship, but it also, the other person that you're with sees that and they understand that you love them enough to look past minor things like that. Because ultimately,
Sure.
those are small
It's
things.
nothing.
Who cares?
Yeah,
I mean,
who cares? At least she's authentic and honest with who she is, and you really enjoy.
she does
Lindsay.
not apologize for her booby traps at all.
Yeah.
She laughs along with me.
She does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes
Just like
she'll
when
be
she laughs, and I'm like,
so
Lindsay,
sorry."
I do not understand this text message. And she's like, "Yep, figure it out." Okay, got it. I'll try.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. So let me see here. What else I have? So I think, and this is just my perspective based on a lot of the history that I have, and a lot of history that I have with myself. But you know, for the longest time, I've noticed that I tend to make things significantly harder than they really need to be. So, especially before I went to rehab, especially when I was in heavy in my addiction, I would just constantly make things way harder than they actually had to be because I just couldn't relax and let things just exist as they are and just accept things as they presently are. Just always having to get in there and just like have my way with things instead of just being able to relax. And I think that that's like I think that's a point worth putting out there, is that sometimes people tend to make things harder than they actually need to be. And I wouldn't say that you and Lindsay necessarily have an issue with that. I think I did for a very long time. I've gotten significantly better that just let things exist. Let the flowers arrange themselves. Instead of trying to control and manipulate and twist things into how you want them to be. And so inside of a relationship, if you could just let Lindsay exist how she is and just let the flower grow into being a flower and not trying to like prune it and pluck it and whatever, just letting things exist how they are, letting people exist how they are, and try not to try not to control things and make things harder than they actually need to be. It'd be very frustrating for somebody else when you're constantly trying to do that.
Yeah, one of my other points in here was you should always expect people to change. I mean, and not always in the ways that you want them to, because they are their own person. They're going to, over time, are going to become someone new,
different.
They're going to grow and change. Some of those good quality traits that you liked about them early on, they might not be there in the same way in 5 to 10 years. They might change a lot. If there's something negative about a person that is relatively minor, that might actually go away also. That might not be nearly as big of a deal, whether it's you just becoming used to that thing about that person, or they just grow up and they mature and they grow out of that. So there is a lot of truth in what you said, that you just a human being is going to have to be their own person, and you have to give them space
to be that person.
Yeah,
and not check their temperature constantly.
Right. They're not going to be able to survive an environment where they feel like they're either walking on eggshells all the time because you're always nagging them about being different or fixing some part of themselves that you don't
they can't just be themselves.
Yeah, you're not going to get
There's
that
no
genuine
peace in
person. No, that's not an environment where people will thrive. It's hard because there's a balance. Like you do want to encourage someone to become better.
But you don't want to change them.
Yeah,
Change who they are.
It has to be their initiative. Yeah. Maybe you have conversations about areas where each of you struggles or is not, you have improvement in a relationship or as a person. You have honest relationship or conversations about those things. But it doesn't mean that you're forcing changes on them. Like they have to initiate that themselves. But it's hard. Like there are always going to be those faults you see in another person, and they might not show up. It's finding the right person to get married to is hard because it's like you're expecting to find out every detail about that human before you get into a committed.
Can I just go for one of those arranged marriages where you pick it out for me?
Yeah.
And I don't have to, I mean, you know me better than anybody else. You can pick it out. Then I don't have to worry about it anymore.
I've thought that many times. I felt like, man, Kel's picker is broken right now.
So broken. Yeah, it's terrible.
Can I just pick for you?
Yeah, it's so bad. So bad for so long. Man, that's funny. Well, we could definitely do another podcast or two on this. Unfortunately, we got to bring this one to a close.
Yep.
Because relationships are, I mean, they're very intricate, right? And there's a lot of things that we could discuss about them. Like Jay Shetty, that's all he does is talk about relationships. And the dude has 15 million followers on Instagram right now and has written a book about just relationships. So, you know, there's just a lot that we could go over, whether it be in a romantic relationship or a platonic relationship or a friendship or a business relationship. And we could definitely do another podcast.
It'd be cool to actually bring in a third person to offer some expertise, you know,
in that area.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Bring someone in that could.
We should talk about that. That'd
to
be good.
Build some more ideas on this.
Yeah, that's a great idea, actually. All right, so that will conclude this episode of Slow Burn. Absolutely. And the next one, which ties into this one a little bit, we're going to talk about is selfishness.
Selfishness.
When it's okay to be selfish and when it's not okay to be selfish.
The title is Be Selfish.
Why are you coming up with all the titles all the time?
Well, you're not doing it.
Well, I ain't going to, according to this title. All right, we'll see you guys later. Thanks.
See ya.